do also have the presence of the Pigtail Productions, who are these gentlemen with equipment down here, who are apparently going to put us on the internet. Not quite, particularly those of us my age, are not quite certain about this. But thank you, gentlemen. If you don't want to be filmed, just wave at them and make rude gestures.
Tell us where to go.
One of the ways you can get stories is for people to say, you know, it's easy to make up a story. And I did this story to two old ladies walking along Silver Front, and I still tell it because I quite like it. And it's a story I know well, and I'm not telling stories very well at the moment, so that's why I'm telling it. Up in the Scottish Isles, long ago when there weren't helicopters, and even today the weather can be such that a helicopter can't land when there's an emergency. They had nobody at all to take their church services in their kirk. It was a bad time. When they finally heard that they were going to have somebody there to bury them old and dead, to do the marriages when needed, and do the christenings, even when a child was ill and needed a christening before it died. They would have them on the island for them. So it was a great celebration, and they had a great ceilidh, and the music was played, and the violin of the people who played it for years. Oh, it was a great time. And they kept down the whiskey drinking in honour of the new man of the kirk. Well, the next day was the Sabbath, and they went into the church. And he rose up onto his pulpit, and he said, "Last night I heard the devil's music played. I heard his very noise coming. And it leads to all sorts of sins. And it leads the young into bad ways. It must cease, or the devil will get into every one of your souls." Now, on the island was a family for generation after generation who played the violin. But the son had a young daughter, and he did not want the devil's music in his house, so he took the violin to the minister. And he got the hammer, and he beat it into little bits. The son went back and told his father. And so I thought, my father played the violin. I do. I can't remember anything except joy coming from it. So he took the violin, he went to the shed, and instead he wrapped it up carefully in a piece of old sheet and some sacking, and put it high on the shelf. And then he got some polished wood, and he beat it and beat it and beat it so it was tiny splinters, and he took it to a minister, and he said, "I couldn't stand having the devil's music in my house a minute longer. I have brought you this." It's quite true, it was now in the shed, not in the house. But well, you can't not play music if it's in your fingers. So on moonlight nights, he would go and he would take his violin and climb down the steep cliff path to where the cave was. And he'd go in and he'd play the violin. And the villagers thought that the minister must have been right. For crossing the island on a moonlight night, you sometimes heard the music of the devil coming on the ground. Well, one day, on the moonlit night, his grandchild heard a noise, and she ran to the window just in time to see her grandfather carrying something under his arm and leaving the gate and going towards the cliff. So she got on her clothes as quick as she could, picked up her shoes, ran down on tiptoe, opened the door very quietly, and shut it, put her shoes on, and ran after him, just in time to see him disappearing down the cliff. And as she got to the cliff edge, she saw him nearly at the bottom, and she climbed down that dangerous path up. And when she got to the bottom, there was a great big black hole, and from this was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. She listened, totally enchanted. And she stood there, and her grandfather looked up, and there she was, silhouetted, black against the silver of the sea. And he said, "Do you like this?" "Oh, grandfather, it is wonderful. I have never heard something as beautiful as this. Please, please, do play." And so, that's just next day. I will come, and we will come together, and I will get the little violin that we've taught all the children to play. And so it was, she learnt to play. And she learnt to play the violin, and it was as if the music was in her fingers, so she learned quicker than any other child he'd ever taught. And soon she was playing the big violin, and he said, "You're as good as I am even now as a child. I have no more I can teach you." But when she was 14, the old man died. And she knew that she could not live on that island where the music was forbidden. And so she asked her young man, a young fisher lad, to take her over to Oban, so that she could get to the mainland and play her music. So one night, he took her over and he left her on the quay with her violin and very little else. And so she started to play when the light came. Now it so happens that Oban has the ferry boats coming from all the islands, and there happened to be a musician on it, and he had a few hours before the train to London left. So he went and he heard somebody playing well, and when he saw it, he was surprised, for it was a young girl. And when she finished playing, he started to talk to her and bought her some breakfast. And she told him what had happened. He said, "I think I can help you." There's a famous school in London run by a man called Menuhin, for people who are very talented, and I'm sure you could get a scholarship. So he took her to London, and there, indeed, she did get a scholarship. And she learned to play not only her folk music, but classical music, and she became a famous violinist and travelled the world, and in time got married and had children. But she never ever lost the love that she had for her folk music that her grandfather had taught her. And so when her children were a bit bigger, they grew up and they made a ceilidh band. Now in Sidmouth there is a festival that happens once a year, and at this time the people who've been running it had been running it 50 years. It was a worldwide festival from people coming all wide, and they'd had 2 or 3 wet seasons. The council wouldn't guarantee them money if they lost it. Their pot of money had gone, and they thought 50 years is enough of running a festival. We'll give up. Well, that last golden anniversary, we'll have families who've got fathers and sons, Watersons and people like that, to come and play. And so she was asked to come and play ceilidhs at the festival. And she was delighted to do so. But she took her violin, and I don't know if you know Sidmouth, it's got a waterfront, and then under these red cliffs, which the sea has carved little caverns in, you can walk round. If you walk round, you come to a great big wooden steps called Jacob's Ladder, and at the top there are walled gardens. The council keeps beautifully, and there's a cafe. If you like cakes, it is a superb place. It has a large selection, and you get large slices. And the people are very nice there as well. And you, on a wet day, you can go up and sit in a little castle with little windows looking out over the sea. and on sunny days sit out in the garden with all the beautiful flowers round. Well, she took her violin and she walked along that promenade till she came to a cavern. The day that they were going to play the first gaily. And she took out her violin and she started to play to thankfulness for her grandfather who taught her when she was a child, had given her the love of that music. And so it was that I'd been to that very cake shop and I was walking along and I heard her playing. And that is how I know the story.